Alright, hello, welcome back to my channel. Today I plan on showing you how to replace the ignition wires on your older points and coil type ignition system. So this is pretty easy to do. When I first started doing this, the information really wasn't out there, and I kind of feel that's still kind of the case, but it still kind of is. So I guess first and foremost, depending on where you live is going to be depending on how hard it is to get new ignition wires locally. There's many different types of ignition wires, don't get me wrong, but we need a specific type. So these are copper, well, I have a copper conductor inside. They kind of went away from that, I think, I don't know, some point in the 70s, maybe in the 80s, when fuel injection came around or more sensitive electronics came around. The high power running through these leads causes interference with radios and that kind of thing. So it's not usually something you see in a car anymore. They are readily available inside of tractors. Well, at least older tractors. So depending on where you live is going to kind of depend on how easy it is to get this stuff. I live in a large populated area, and I kind of think that anywhere near a coastal town is kind of the same way. If you live in the Midwest somewhere where there's still heavy farming and heavy equipment that needs repairing, it's probably going to be easier to find replacement wires than it is for me. I used to be able to get in Napa, and whenever I needed to change one, I'd drive down to Napa. They sell the connector ends, the boots, and the wires individually. Seems like once their supply ran out, because I bought it all, they didn't order anymore because I was the only guy buying it. So I can't get it locally. I need to order it now, but I know there are plenty of places that still stock the stuff because it is very common on older tractors. These wires use a solid copper conductor inside. Newer spark plug wires that you find on your car do not. This is some kind of graphite nylon wire that can carry the spark but doesn't conduct electricity as well. So the old wires, they have a indicator clamp right here. This one's off a 50s engine that somebody put onto the 70s motor. This is off a 1976, I believe, 6 horsepower. So this should be a kind of a little chrome looking thing or aluminum thing, not a brass, but that's no big deal. All it does is tell you which one's the top cylinder. So that's gonna have to come off. The original setup for these, and let me see if this one will pull off. Yeah, I just broke that one, but who cares? Alright, so we'll twist it. Maybe that'll free it up a little. Nope, and that one snapped off too. Alright, fix that little mishap. So this is your original spark plug connector, if you will. This just kind of crimps onto the wire. It pierces the copper, or in this case, it looks like an aluminum wire, from the inside, makes the connection, and then your boot kind of just slides over. Now this boot's old, but that's kind of the gist of it. Spark plug wire goes into the hole, makes the spark happen, everything's hunky-dory. So you can, if you're ordering parts, you can just order new boots, new little lead ends, and go about your merry way. Or you can replace it with other components, which I'll be showing you how to do. So here's a modern spark plug wire. I'm going to go ahead and cut it, show you what the insides look like. Cut the end off, pull the boot off, throw those away later. So I'm going to be stripping it with a razor blade. I'm sure they sell actual strippers for these things, but I don't have any, and with the razor blade I do fine. And there's, looks like our graphite wire inside there. Looks like nylon with plastic over it. But I can tell you right now, if you think you're going to use one of these with this type of wire, grip it in there, it'll work. It ain't. You need this type of wire. Again, this is a solid conductor, or copper conductor inside. See if you can see the difference. See it? These are available in different sizes. I think 6, 7, 8, 9 millimeter. 8's the most common now. 7 millimeters still available. I think that 7 millimeters are considered standard and cheap. 8 millimeters are the better wires. for what we're doing in our outboards here, 8mm is an option. It won't fit through the holes, it won't fit in the coil. It'll fit through the boots if you buy the 8mm boots, but we still have the problem of it not fitting through our ignition coils. So you need to buy 7mm wire, so keep that in mind. So here's a little pack of boots that I have left over. I think I ordered these on Amazon. Might have gotten them on eBay. I'm not entirely sure, don't remember. So in these we have a few different options of spark plug terminals. Where are they? This one. That's part of the kit that this one was. That's for the distributor cap. Usually they fit on top. Don't use those here on our outboards, at least in this application. So what we're after are these guys. I think they call them 90-degree ends or right angles. It doesn't matter. And then we're going to need a boot. This is a 2-cylinder outboard. Most points of coil types are. So we'd obviously need 2 of them. I'm not going to be making 2. I'm only going to be showing you on 1. So we need the terminal, the boot, and the wire. Now, when I would buy these in Napa, the wire was like 80 cents a foot. So these guys were $1 and these were like 50 cents or something. So it's really not that expensive to do them both. But if you're doing this, you're probably also replacing other parts in your outboard. So you might want to consider pricing out how much the wire is from your part supplier, along with boots and spark plug wires. Now, I don't necessarily like the older type. You know, these guys. I mean, yeah, they've been working for 30 years, so they're fine. But I just like the look of these and the overall strength of them. So I always just buy wire and then do this. So I'll let you make that decision how you want to do it. Now, you are going to need some special tools to be able to crimp that, obviously. So what I have are these guys. You may already have some too and not even know it. A lot of times when they make these cheap wire strippers, they just start throwing random features on there, I think just to increase their selling point. And that is the exact reason why I bought these, because they have this little 7mm spark plug wire crimp spot. 7 and 8, but 7, whatever. Anyway, so if you have a cheap pair of these, you might want to go take a look at them and see if you already have that. If not, you have to buy one. I think these were $12. They're really not that expensive. I only use them for these, that way I don't lose them, because I strip wire all the time. And I'll show you how these work. Another thought here too. You don't want to trim these to size first and then crimp the end on in case you screw up. You want it long enough. So what I do anyway is strip it, crimp it, put the boot on, and then I measure it to length and cut it. Again, that way if I screw up here, I'm not, that much shorter now. Now, to crimp the terminal onto the wire, ideally you have the copper or aluminum or whatever type of wire you have under the crimp. So you can kind of see that this terminal is probably made for 8 or 7mm. Anyway, it probably stops about there on an 8, but can go a little further on a 7. So your spark plug wire is going to rest at that point, so you just make a little mark on the end right there. And that is about where you want to cut your wire off. Now you don't want to go too deep there. All you're kind of trying to do is score it. You don't want to nick the copper inside or the wire inside. But once you score it, you can give it a little bit of twist, and it'll break it the rest of the way for you. Then you can pull it all off, and then you have your internal wire. And then fold it around. And in theory, most of your wire is now underneath. Now if you take a look at the way these work, let me see if I can give you a backer there. Kind of a little M shape to it. And see that? So when you crimp it, what it's basically doing is kind of folding it in around and down on itself to really lock it together. So these should be the same thickness as your terminal here, so you can do it in one pass. But since we're dealing with kind of cheap tools, we don't really have that option. Now see, it's too wide for the crimper. So a lot of times you kind of got to squeeze it in a little bit, help get it started. You kind of put your wire in there, like so. Put it into your little crimp cavity, it should fit in now. I don't think it matters necessarily how you do it. If you want to do the middle first, the edges, work your way around. But you'll see how I do this in a second. And I, of course, grip my glove in there too. So at that point, it's already kind of a little bit crimped, so the wire's staying put now. But I'll crimp it the rest of the way. So that's kind of the start of it. That's it. So then I'll make my way through the whole terminal, doing the whole thing. And our spark plug terminal end is crimped on there. Give you an idea how it looks. As you can see, worked pretty well. So then we get our boot. Now with the boot, keep in mind, you're going to have a short side and a long side. The long side is going to be for the wire, short side is going to be for the spark plug. So you can use your other boot if you can't eyeball it, tell which one's longer. So this is the shorter side, which means our spark plug wire and terminal assembly go into that side. So I'm kind of using my hand here as a stop, and I'm pushing on the wire and pushing it straight in. You don't want to bend it or crink it or fold it or anything. You're going to need some wrist strength here, but it goes in. So you can kind of see it in there, nice and aligned. So there's our wire, terminal, and boot all kind of assembled. Now when you're doing this, you want to do one at a time. You're probably going to be replacing the coils at this point. Coils come with a new little boot that goes inside of the coil. This is just a demonstration, so I'm not going to be putting one of those in there, mainly because I don't know if I have a new one. Pretty much every ignition plate I've ever seen always has little clamps, at least one here, and then one on the back side to hold it in. To make things simple on me, I'm not going to replace this wire, I'm just going to replace this side because it's only held in with this one clamp. So pull this screw off. This screw is either going to be, well, it's always going to be extremely tight. Who am I kidding? So grab yourself a bigger screwdriver, put some downforce on it, give it a good twist. Remove the clamp. On this side. If you didn't remove this, you just open it up and took it off. It's great. It doesn't matter how you do it. But in my case, it's got to come off now. And there is our wire. So we're replacing that coil. You see what I did there to identify it? Just kind of put my hand around it. So that's the coil we're going to be pulling off and putting our new wire on. I got a Phillips one here. This primarily locks the ignition plate down to the motor, but it also holds in a coil. So what you got to do is you kind of got to pull it up a little bit. It seems like the plate has a section of threads in it too, so it threads through the plate and then it drops down and then threads into the little brass ring that holds it down to the motor. So even when you pull it back up, it won't come straight off. It feels loose, and it is, but it's not ready to come out. So you still got to unscrew this one too. With that unscrewed, we can now undo our condenser clamp. You don't want to put too much force that way, so I'll be holding the back with my finger just to make sure I don't bend it. Get in there and take off this screw. The reason you need to do this is because the positive side of the coil also attaches to it. See right there? Someday my phone will stop ringing, but for now, I gotta answer it. So, as I was saying, positive side of the coil attaches to the little points and condenser there, and that leaves our coil loose. So, the wire runs through this way, so you can't just pull it straight up. You kind of gotta get out of there. And that basically fell right off. And that just kind of pulls off. And that leaves our spark plug wire out and loose. Now, depending on if this side is the top or bottom coil, I don't know. It's possible this was put on wrong. So don't just assume that this is going to be the top on your motor, because this could be wrong. I don't know. But make sure you get that little indicator off. You don't want to replace these and lose it. Not a big deal if you do, don't get me wrong. You just gotta try to figure out which coil is the supposed to be for the top cylinder. So there, got our little indicator off. And our wire pulled out. Now what you want to do now is kind of guesstimate about how long this should be. Keep in mind it had a boot kind of going into it. On this side actually. Keep in mind it had a boot going in there a little bit. So it was probably right about there. You can make it a little bit longer if you want to play safe. So you just kind of hold it there, measure out the new wire, and then you would cut this wire right there. Pair of dikes, pair of scissors, razor blade, it doesn't really matter how you cut it, just cut it. Since this is demonstration, I'm not going to be trimming this wire because when I'm done with this I can then just take this boot back off and use it for something later. But let's pretend I did actually trim that down. So put your new wire inside your new hole. Flip your plate back over. Put your new little boot on. I suppose you can get some silicone lube or something in here and help that boot slide onto the wire better. But you can pull it in there. And when that's at that point, yeah, see that little pin? Sometimes you'll notice it's got a little bit of a thread to it, so it kind of really grabs the wire. This one doesn't. This one's an older coil, and it just forces itself in there. So that's how that works. That's all you do. You can, I mean, there's probably plenty of different ways to do this, but kind of force the wire in there, or you feel it seating all the way in. Looks like right about there. When you're reinstalling the coil, well, I've noticed a lot of coils I've taken off where I think people just kind of force that in there, nail it down, and all it does is kind of crunch up the little boot here. So kind of give it a watch. You can kind of jiggle it and twist it in there. Usually it fits in there perfectly fine. If you do happen to crimp the boot, I've never noticed a performance difference on crushed boots versus fine boots. So I don't think it matters too much, but you know, just keep an eye on it. Now typically you would just kind of reattach the coil now. If I can find where I put all my stuffs here. So that's kind of the base of that one. Basics of that one. Now, when we took the old wire off, you'll notice it was pretty pinched. You may not be able to avoid that, but if you can, great. Just kind of put that back in. Oh, nice and good. Put your little indicator clamp back on. Now, in this case, I should have put it on first, slid it over, but you can just widen it back up and put it back on. That's pretty much the gist of how to make your own spark plug wires. Let me show you some other options. So if you had a newer 2-cylinder or 3 or 4, use these type of coils, you could easily remake yourself some of these, because this is just two 90-degree angles and a little tiny short piece of wire. So those, piece of cake as well. Now I've never done this type, but in theory you could. Spark plug wire simply twists and pulls out of there. Now it's a much tighter fit, but same concept as the other coils. See inside, you still have that little point. Well, that's actually a screw-on, so that's actually probably going to grab it better than the other ones. See what I mean? Just kind of threads in there. Now it may be a little bit harder to get in there, so what I would do, just kind of spray some silicone lube onto your hand, or maybe some dielectric grease or some type of electrical system friendly lubricant. Get it on the end of the wire, and in theory, screw it into your spark plug. Now again, this is threaded. You have to thread it on there, or into there rather. In theory, I've now just made a new wire for my coil there. Obviously, you wouldn't have it this long. You would trim it down to this size. I'm just doing this for demonstration. And also, I've never actually done one of these type of coils. Usually it's to the point where the plug wire is deteriorated, the coil doesn't work anyway, so you just replace the whole thing. But I don't see why this wouldn't work. And if you look at the end, you can clearly see that it threaded itself into there. So, yeah. And here's a finished example on my little 6-horse. I do think it kind of gives it a nice modern look to the spark plug wires. And if you're trying to fix up an engine and sell it, and the potential new owner sees these nice pretty spark plugs, they're probably going to think, oh wow, that's been changed, perfect. So, I don't know, maybe it can be used as a selling point as well. Now it does stick out, what is that, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch, half an inch more than the original boot. But you know, you can simply remedy that by just kind of twisting them downwards. But I've never run into any clearance issues with the hood nut fitting. But if you're tight or limited on space, you might want to keep that in mind. Well, that's kind of it for the DIY spark plug video. So if you got any questions, let me know. Comments, let me know. If you found this video helpful, let me know. If you think anything I should change or improve on, please let me know that as well. I will do my best to put some links in the description here of where you can get these parts and tools. Parts and tool, I mean. So yeah, and that's it.